I'm Wendi, homeschooling mom of 9 over a period of 30 years.
So a question that I have come up with as I've considered the idea of home educating my future kids, it worries me quite a bit to think about the one area that I'm super weak in, which even though I'm really good at the math that I need to know, I still feel a little bit insecure at the thought of teaching my future kids math if I choose to home educate them.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine that there are a lot of parents out there that have that subject that they're also insecure about trying to teach or feel intimidated to teach their kids. What would you tell that parent or someone like me?
That's a great question. And you're right. It is probably the most common asked question of moms. I just didn't do really well in math. There's lots of options now. You can do something like a scripted math. So you're just like reading it and then you're learning it along with the kid. You might find that's nice because you renegotiate negative experiences with math in the process of doing that. That may not be realistic if you've got a bunch of kids. You're trying to nurse the baby, and also, that could be really too much. And so lots of great online programs there are now. I'm sure. I don't know as many of them because I don't use the online ones as much. Be careful with any that have too many games, because the kids figure out to just like mess around with the games.
Yeah.
And they don't really learn the concepts, right? So I have yet to find a good mathematical thinking one that's online myself. I'm sure there's some of you out there who found them. So send them in because I'd like to hear what they are.
Drop them in the comments.
Yep, do let us hear them. I love the Good and the Beautiful math because they just do a really great job of incorporating many things. Everything from measurement, like liquid measurement. They do, centimeters as well as inches, and that's nice in our world that we live in today. I like that they have little boxes of manipulatives that come with the things, the levels, so that there's stuff to do with. It's not overwhelming, but there's just little things to do. And when you get to the older grades, they have little videos with them that have explanations and stuff. So that's super helpful. When I say older grades, I think it starts in level 4. It's not like, clear, way advanced, right? And hopefully by then they're, a little more independent in their studies. And then you can just let them carry on with that. The other option is find someone who loves math and employ them. Maybe you have an older child that really loves it, is good at it, and can help them, or employ someone, in your neighborhood. It doesn't have to be a business. It can be if, that's affordable and in your budget, but it can also just be someone that's excited about it in your neighborhood that, your child can go spend some time with regularly and just have that one-on-one focus. That sometimes helps with kids that have trouble giving attention to things as well. So I would recommend those things.
Well, and from the kids' perspective on that, it sometimes I'd love to hear the parents' perspective as well, because from the kids' perspective, I remember the times that we would go and do math with grandpa, or we would do, it might not be math that's the subject that you're worried about teaching. You were really good at teaching math, but maybe you had an insecurity around history or something else. I don't know what it would have been for you, but maybe it's not math. If you're the parent that is thinking, insert whatever you feel insecure about here. Finding as the kid being in those external environments with other people. I remember aunts being brought in sometimes to help us with one thing or another. Phonograms, our phonics and spelling. That was one of the
That's
things that I
true.
remember one of our aunts helping with.
Yeah, and were you more willing to do it with her than
Yes, because it was a stranger. Yeah.
right, right,
It's not a stranger, but it wasn't my mom. So, yeah.
right. Yeah, there is an element of that that's really good to bring in just a different person. So the kids are a little uncomfortable with the person and they won't just be like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
If you bring that other person in, especially if cousins are involved and they're, kind of going along. So we did do that. My sister-in-law and I did some math stuff. She did some reading stuff. And then we, traded kids, go back and forth, to the various stations. And I'm amazed how you guys remember what she taught, many years after,
That's
maybe
true.
even to this day.
Yeah, I remember she taught us about syllables.
Yeah, yeah. And if I had said that, it may not have been that memorable, right? But because you were kind of on your best behavior, you actually paid attention and it was good.
Yeah.
So that kind of a thing, you find someone like that you could kind of trade off with, or just let them have time with your kids. And it provides nice variety too, which is nice.
Yeah. Now, on the heels of that, I should just say that, a parent could easily feel that, well, if I'm going to just outsource a subject, why shouldn't I just outsource the rest? And I think if you feel like homeschooling is the answer for your family, that you should know from the kids' perspective that, I was very grateful for not only the other people you brought in, but I loved having you as my teacher. That was one of the reasons that I continuously chose to keep doing homeschool as I got older, right?
Yeah.
So that was something that is something that's worth noting, that even if the kid maybe acts like, yeah, I don't want my mom to teach me this, in the end, mom or whoever is doing the teaching at home is the person that you do sees your safe place at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully you tend to the relationship so that the kids feel like that, right? Whether you do the math with them or not, hopefully the relationship is in good repair.
Is homeschooling a religious or a secular thing? Is it something that you can do with religion intermixed? And is it something you could do without intermixing religion? Say, you come from a less religious household.
Yes, and yes on both accounts with those two questions. I know people from both, both camps and in between, right? And for sure, you can find curriculum with both. Personally, I have a religious belief, and therefore I'm excited to, infuse that into truth, no matter where we find it, whether that's history, science, geography, wherever. But you can find curriculums that are character based. And, I don't know too many people, I can't think of a single one, who doesn't want their kids to have a good, strong character. And so you can find those lessons. You can find like the Joy School. The Ayers have printed their stories they used in the preschool did years ago, called Joy School. You can find that book now with stories about that show good character starting as young as preschool. There's the what's it called, Hive of Busy Bees or something like that. And there's other Wisdom of the Millers, I think is what it's called, where you're following families, usually agrarian based lifestyle, and where they're on a farm, and the lessons learned, some of them hard, right? It's kind of a Little House on the Prairie type of approach, and it's really great to have. We want our kids to have a good character, and that's a really great thing. Most people want that for their kids. So if you don't want the religion piece in it, you can certainly find those curriculums that are based like that, where you just have those great stories with good character. We use them too, of course, but also, just the character trait based, so that you can just count on that and then, move through history or whatever. Look at these great character traits this person in history had, and it made all the difference.
Mm.
Look at these character traits this mathematician had. Mathematicians are people too. Both those volumes are really, really good. I have those in the resources. You can check those out. They're really good, and it's easy to see as you read them. Oh, look, they're persevering in spite of all odds. Biography is a really good place to do that with too, if you can find accurate ones. How many people, Louis Pasteur being one of them, there are many others, are really persecuted at the time they're living because their ideas are flying in the face of the commonly believed practices or ideas. And it's really nice to see how they handle such things, and then how they press through them and figure out a way to present truth, or circumstances present themselves. So there's a circumstance where they, people are begging them to just try, with the rabies vaccine, for example, with Louis Pasteur. He understood a lot of things about disease causing organisms that people at that time didn't. And so it was very helpful that he had experiences he had, and he didn't give up. That's a really great thing. Edison's another really good example of that, where, their character is what got them to push through and finally figure out what was going to work to make the light bulb. And you can see from his upbringing, Edison's upbringing, the contraptions he created, and some explosions and what have you, things that his parents let him do. We wouldn't say explosions are a good idea, but things that he explored when he was little that helped him create those character traits, and they just fed them, so that then when he was an adult and really just trying to figure out how to make this light bulb work, then he could do it, right?
Yeah.
And that you can find that all over the place. So
I recall reading, I loved to organize the bookshelf as a kid, and that was fun. It's still fun for me. It's not a chore. And so I remember one of the many times I reorganized the bookshelf in the schoolroom, running across the Mathematicians Are People Too books, and I opened the one and read the story of Albert Einstein and how he got kicked out of school as a kid, and this is Einstein, and I remember being just, whoa, amazing, like, and the fact that his mother believed in him and took him and said, you're not dumb, like, we will, like, you will learn, like, it's okay, and she nurtured him, and here's who he became.
yeah.
I just remember that being really touching to me. So I think these character-based models are great, and honestly, this kind of touches back on another question too, but just a note to remember that these things happen with your kids too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they might be reorganizing the bookshelf and learn something that has stuck with them for decades, right? So you may not even realize that because it wasn't in your lesson plan, but interesting things happen when children feel safe and nurtured and free to explore their character, deepen their character.
Yeah.
And then if you choose to add, if you are religious and you add your religious tenets and beliefs on top of whatever character building curriculum you're using, or add that in as in some other type of curriculum that's more religiously based, that can can also be great for if that's your focus.
For sure. It's interesting to have these conversations with you guys. We've talked about it over the years here and there, but to have this dedicated time to sit here and talk back and forth about, like, I hadn't heard the Mathematicians Are People Too story, right? We just haven't had an occasion to talk about it. And so it just reinforces that idea that we do our best to be consistent. Try not to be like emotional, just consistent with some sort of a routine of learning that we have in our family. This is our family culture, and this is our routine. We'll talk about that in a future thing. But if you can be consistent with that, try not to be emotional. Try not to be emotionally charged, so you can think and be inspired with ideas. And then, because you can never guess what your child is going to get out of any one lesson that you're going to do. It's just, I mean, I've got 9 children to prove it. And it happens every day where the younger kids will say something and I'll, I noticed this, Mom. And I'll just be like, well, that's really observant of you. I never would have thought of that. That they just, we can never guess where they're coming from and what they've already got in their head. We can hope and we can, plant those seeds. I'm not saying don't do that. What I am saying is we can never guess and calculate accurately all the things that are being learned in any given situation, whether it's labeled, this is school time or not, right? Yeah. There's always learning happening in one form or another. If the brain is calm enough to allow that learning to happen, and if the child is willing to participate enough, like organize the bookshelf, enough to allow that learning to happen.
Oh, I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I have one more question that just came to mind. What would you say is something that you did as a parent to help yourself discover and notice your kids' interests? Because I know that there are some kids that have really evident interests, like me and my horses. But then I'm aware that we have other siblings who it's been really tough to figure out, like, what are they actually interested in? What actually excites them when it comes to learning anything? Yeah. What have you done as a parent to discover those interests?
Yeah, it's tricky, especially when you have a lot of kids. So again, people coming along with the interests of other kids gives you a chance to watch and see if they're interested too in that. Usually they aren't. Usually everybody has their thing they're really excited about. And so it just comes with that exposure to lots of different things, lots of different people, lots of different, people that are alive, as well as, biographies you read or stories that you read. And then you see that a kid picks up on something. One example from recently here is I hired a gal, speaking of hiring help, I hired a gal to help because we had a lot of kids with a lot of needs and I just wasn't keeping up with all of it, right? So one day I was helping my dad take care of him and the gal was here with the kids and just decided to talk about the solar system, right? Just like on a whim. I hadn't given her any, direction, nothing. She just, let's talk about the solar system. So she, was talking about the sun, drawing pictures, just like pencil, paper, nothing big, right? So the 2 youngest boys that are 9 and 6, they were just like so excited about that, right? And so, Mom, we're talking about the solar system. Do you know what the solar system is? They were telling me all about it, right? And so I figured that would blow over in time, right? No. We keep revisiting the solar system. I'll start a different science thing and we go right back. As soon as something about the moon shows up, we're right back to the solar system again, right? And they just love it. The 9-year-old especially. I mean, he's just all over it. And he just loves it. And so that kind of a thing where, she just threw that out. Exposure is really the key. Just like exposing them to a bunch of things is really key. And that happens pretty naturally when you've got a family setting, right? Where people, like ballroom dancing. So they're going to that, or they're at least seeing you do it, or music, or, baseball or basketball or whatever the thing is, exposure. And then, of course, if you can let them try it, then you can discover, yeah, I really like that. Now, having said that, for kids that tend to be followers in general, there are personalities that tend to be that way for whatever reason. There are multiple reasons why that is. Those are really hard to figure out because they'll want to just gravitate to whatever they see as the most fun or most attended to interests.
Or even like the fad thing that's in.
Yeah. And so that's really hard because you can't really tell what they're sincerely interested in. You can let them try one of the things, and if they don't really run with it, if they grumble, while you're going or whatever, then that might not be the thing. You can still keep going and finish, your time, whatever that thing was, if it was playing basketball or whatever, finish your time in it and just look for, another something. So far as those kids that you're referring to, we haven't found those yet.
Yeah.
But it's okay. They will someday, hopefully, and find joy in pursuing those.
And I think for those who maybe have more obscure interests, I don't know if you noticed this about like me and Jeffrey with our like weaknesses, but like, for example, I really liked, I liked to fill out forms, right? I mean, it's just like, I have fun doing paperwork, right? He would not really enjoy that, except for when it came to like drawing his sprinkler system graphs, that suddenly was just like a huge deal. And so like sometimes there's those like weird things that, like filling out forms, like she gets her hand on a blank, back in the day, a paper rental application, and I was like, I'm gonna fill it out, and I have it in my journal all filled out. And like, that was something that I love to do, that, oh my gosh, I was practicing my handwriting. Who knew, right? And so sometimes, maybe there's like an obscure thing with the kid that doesn't seem to like present any big interest, but like maybe like the graph paper or the rental application, there's that one little teeny thing that might hint at something down the line, or like the tip of the iceberg that, if there's a way to somehow kind of dig down, you'll discover. That being said, I do know that like I know the siblings that we're still trying to understand their interests, and it is true that like sometimes time is all we have,
right?
So that is okay as well.
Yeah,
but right. There's a variety of ways for sure. So